Good afternoon. I'm Beverly Bean, President of the League of Women Voters of Monterey County, and I want to welcome all of you to this very interesting meeting with great community interest in the topic. And I'm going to turn over this program to the person who organized it, our own water expert and Natural Resources Chair, Janet Brennan.
I'm beginning to think that people are following me. I chaired the meeting on the Carmel's K9 Sports Center on Monday, and there were 200 people there. Usually Land Use Advisory Committee meetings have 10, so that was, and usually the League has about 50, so this is a wonderful turnout. Our speakers from Public Water Now are Ron Cohen and George Riley, and they are coming, and from California American, Kevin Tilden and Eric Sabolsis. The League studied water distribution systems in 2007, and as a result of that study, we established 4 criteria for looking at whether or not a system should be purchased. Those criteria are the primary focus of today's questions for the speakers. Each speaker will have 4 minutes each to respond to the various questions. And then at the end, we will have question and answers from the from you, and we'll ask that you make them brief and not make statements, and that we will allow 1 minute each per side to respond to the questions. The order of speaking has been determined by lot, and Public Water Now will go first, and then we will alternate who goes first for each of the following questions. Public Water Now has put the questions up on the overhead, so we'll keep those up there as we go through the program so you can know what the focus of the question is. The first series of questions are: how well has Cal-Am met the following criteria, and or how well would the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District meet them in terms of addressing water resources? Ron, would you go first?
I'll start.
Or George is first?
Okay. Thank you. This is a structured question, so we have a structured approach to the answers. First of all, our perception of the Cal-Am approach to the water resource issues is an abysmal history. We say that they have never declared and never found a new water resource since they've owned the system since 1966. The issues of Cal-Am's attention to the resource is that they seem to be very content to let every water resource that they have deteriorate to the point that it's a problem. San Clemente Dam is one example, with no sediment management, and of course that's on the way out. Los Padres Dam has the same problem, accumulating sediment. There is no management of that sediment accumulation at the Los Padres Dam. Carmel River has been the main source of water for several generations. Excessive pumping led to interventions and ecological damage. The Seaside Aquifer, the second major significant water resource available, has been overpumped by Cal-Am. Cal-Am has a history of enormous leakage in their existing system because it's old and because it's not being maintained. As an intervention, the state stepped in with the CDO in 1995, state legislation in 2001, put the PUC and Cal-Am in bed together convincingly to find an answer to our water problem. It took a CDO, an intervention, to force the issue. Since then, since 1995, Cal-Am has 3 failed projects to date. They may claim that that's not true, but our evidence is they had a new San Clemente Dam in the works in the 90s. They finally abandoned that at a cost to the ratepayer. The Moss Landing pilot project was the beginning of a project, desal project there. They abandoned that. The regional desal in Marina, we know that history, abandoned. The total cost of these projects that fall on the ratepayer is $35 million and counting, because there are some aspects of costs that are not resolved yet. Two other major interventions were federal penalties against Cal-Am for damage, ecological damage, and then there's another court order intervention to restrict the pumping on the Seaside Basin because it was over pumped. That's Cal-Am's history. On the other hand, Water Management District, with limited resources and often hindered by Cal-Am and PUC procedures, has accomplished something. And we think it's a fair amount under the circumstances. They brought two projects to the voters turned them down. We consider our initiative the last chance for the voters to have a say in this. They initiated ASR. Cal-Am was not on board in the early stages. It was a Water Management District project. They successfully worked with the Pebble Beach company, Interest, Community Services District, and so on, to reclaim water there and save it. There's a small desal plant that they initiated in early 2000s. Cal-Am opposed it. Under threat of rationing, they instituted conservation measures as well as rebate programs, and they manage those programs today. They mitigated the damage from Carmel. They sponsor integrated management planning throughout the area, and it's a Water Management District issue. So the key differences here is that Cal-Am has largely destroyed its stewardship of the resources. With limited resources, Water Management District has been able to move forward.
Cal-Am will be next.
Well, first, I just want to thank the League for hosting this event today. I do appreciate the opportunity to sit here and debate the issues and talk through what's important, as opposed to vetting this in the local newspaper. So I really do think this is a great opportunity. To respond to George and also to speak to the question, as a company, and when we're talking about water resources, American Water and California American Water are experts in the field of water supply. We have a compliance rate that is top in the country, 99%, for compliance with all of our rules and regulations for the operation of public water systems. We take that very seriously. Our staff here in the Monterey office, we have highly certified employees up to the top level that is issued for the state of California. And we do take the day-to-day operations of this system very seriously. George mentioned leakage rate. And it's easy to say we have a high leakage rate. But what is the true leakage rate in the Monterey system? And right now we're about 6%, which, if you look in a textbook, that's world-class. Of course, we need to be world-class here because our water supplies are so constrained. But to say that we have a high leakage rate is just simply incorrect. We have taken steps to reduce the leakage through investment in the system. We invested $2 million in Seaside last year to replace the old steel pipe there that has been in place since the 40s. And it's that investment, the targeted investment, that is really helping to improve the operation. As we reduce losses through leaks, that provides water that we can supply to our customers. So that really is an important aspect, and I wanted to get that straight. As far as development of water supplies, we did partner with the Water Management District on ASR. I feel like that's a partnership. We're working to operate the ASR system. We, as the operators of the system, do operate that. We work with the district on the tracking of the amounts injected, and I really feel like that's just a great partnership with them, and we're working together to continue and expand that program further because it has been successful. ASR is dependent on rainfall, and this year we're in a terrible drought. And so there really has been little available through the ASR program. That's why desalination is important. We partnered with the City of Sand City on the desal plant that was constructed there, and we feel like that's been a very successful partnership. So in the development of water supplies, I feel like we have been working to resolve the water supply issues that the peninsula faces. The Seaside Basin, it is overdrafted. We're not the only pumper from that basin. I'm glad to say that there is no evidence of seawater intrusion, and we spend a lot of time and effort managing the basin to ensure that seawater intrusion does not occur. We're continuing to rely on that resource. It does provide benefit to us and our customers, and so we manage it carefully to ensure seawater intrusion does not occur. We have a schedule to replenish the basin to get it back to whole, but again, there are multiple pumpers on that basin, and we're working together with the water master to manage that basin properly, so it will continue to be a resource for this community. Thank you.
The next question is, how well has CalAm met the following criteria, or how well would the Water Management District maintain the physical assets, including having long-range plans for maintenance and improvements? CalAm. Kevin will go. Eric. I'm sorry.
As far as managing the assets, again, I'll go back to the leak rate for this system. It gets a lot of attention, and it's easy to say that we have a high leak rate, when in fact we actually have a level of leakage that's about 6%. 6% of the water that we put into the pipes is lost through leaks. That is a world-class value, especially this system has been in place for many years. We've targeted, through our engineering studies, comprehensive planning studies, and infrastructure assessments, to know exactly where we need to target our dollars to get the most value when we do place new mains in the ground. Seaside, as I mentioned earlier, continues to be a place that we're focused on. The Carmel Valley transmission main and some of the other smaller subdivisions in Carmel Valley, we've gone in and targeted replacement, and that has driven that leakage rate down significantly. We've implemented a computerized maintenance management system, which allows us to track each asset in our system, the hours that pump or that motor has operated, when it's due for preventive maintenance, whether it be an oil change. When we see failures, we can basically track failures and see perhaps where we're having our issues, or if there's a specific motor vendor that is having more failures, we can avoid that equipment in the future. So this system generates work for our employees in the field. We've issued them all laptops so that their work is managed in the field as opposed to coming back to the office and talking to a supervisor. That really has improved our efficiency, and that efficiency is passed along to customers in their bills. So there is a benefit to the customer of that. I would say that backflow preventer testing, we're always on top of the health and safety of our customers, and so that's included in this computerized maintenance management system. We also have hydrant testing that we're out there, the fire flows that are needed in the event of a fire, which hopefully, as dry as it is, we don't have that kick up. But we're constantly managing our assets to ensure that when needed, they're available. We had a hydrant down on Carmel Valley Road that I think was hit 2 or 3 times, and we went in, we looked at that thing, we placed bollards, we put in some additional bracing to ensure that, for whatever reason, that was an unlucky hydrant. We wanted to make sure if it gets hit again that it doesn't fail. So we go out and we look at our system. We target investment in areas where we feel like the return on investment is going to be greatest. That does require expertise in the field. And while I will not, the Water Management District does have some fine people there. We work with them every day. But I would say that in the operation of a water system, that is truly what we as a company, that's our business, water and wastewater. We have corporate support, engineering support that helps to really improve the efficiency of our operation. And I just don't see that efficiency would increase in any way with the change that's been proposed. Our 5-year capital plan, it's available. It's part of our rate case. If there's anybody that's ever interested in looking at what our plans are for investment in infrastructure, it's on the CPUC website. It's in our rate case, and it's available so that you can see and actually educate yourself on what are our plans and where are we looking to invest our dollars. Each dollar we invest, we do need to make sure that we get the return on investment and maintain our system so that it is going to be operable and viable for the next 100 years into the future.
Public water now.
The issue of maintaining physical assets, physical assets. There was some revealing information, Eric, in your commentary recently in the Herald, where you describe a 3-year window according to the PUC rules. That's your statement, and you just now said there was a 5-year project. So in some ways, there's some confusion about what Cal-Am is saying. But just in the terms of physical assets and the infrastructure itself, we contend that there's been inadequate attention to the maintenance issues, and the breaks in the mains and the problems that you have with some regularity reflect poor maintenance, poor infrastructure. And the recent examples are there's been problems at the Monterey Peninsula Country Club, in Pebble Beach, in Carmel, in Forest Lake Tank, Hatton Canyon, Carmel Valley Road, Cannery Row. Prior owner of American Water Works, which is the German company RWE, sold out. They had owned it and then sold out, partly for reasons of the severity of the degraded infrastructure. And this we learned from a series of minutes that we became aware of several years ago. Under the rate of return regulation that the PUC operates and Cal-Am operates under, a private utility has a financial incentive to neglect routine maintenance in order to allow the infrastructure to degrade to such a point where a significant capital-based project is required. Now, a capital-based project has profit related to it. That's where private utilities make their most money, is on capital projects, major construction projects. And they don't make much money on routine maintenance. So the incentive structure that PUC allows and that Cal-Am follows is to ignore maintenance to the extent that you can get a major capital improvement or construction project underway. There's a financial incentive for this to happen with Cal-Am. Examples of this is that the San Clemente Dam was allowed to silt up, not extend its life, and now we have a huge capital project with a huge profit segment in the cost. And more on that a little bit later. There's an issue of extending the life of Los Padres Dam. I know the Water Management District is pursuing that. Cal-Am is very reluctant to join that process. In fact, Cal-Am has requested through their current rate structure, current rate case of Cal-Am with the PUC, they're requesting to set aside some money for the demolition of Los Padres Dam. So there's a conflict. Public agencies in general, and you can't speak specifically because the Water Management District hasn't had this particular experience, but public agencies in general always have a capital improvements plan that looks out 10, 20, 30 years. All public agencies budget for them. All maintenance issues are debated between what's the most cost-effective approach. Is it to repair a degraded system or to replace a degraded system? And that's usually decided on the basis of the cost-effective approach. Even though Cal-Am mentions cost-effective, the incentive there is not to maintain, but to build new. So the key differences, we think, between Cal-Am is driven by profit motives, which serve the shareholders, and the incentives are in that direction, all through Cal-Am and all through PUC. Water Management District, on the other hand, is incentivized by public benefit and lower cost and being responsive to the public.
Public Water Now is to respond to the next question. Is that you, George?
Yes.
How well has Cal-Am met the following criteria on how or well would the district meet the criteria regarding fair and responsible rates, including a transparent process and adequate information to the public, and whether rates include costs and address unapproved future projects?
I think and we think the rate setting process is more secret than public, more complicated than it needs to be, housed in San Francisco and not locally, and these are our examples. The rate case itself is filed with PUC without any discussion in the public beforehand. The application process itself requires a forensic accounting degree to understand it. The information that's available is not consistent with general accounting practices. The application itself is a statewide application, so all of their issues, all their service areas are involved into one, including sewer. Corporate overhead costs are hidden. You can't find them. We've struggled enormously to understand what's going on behind the scenes, behind the issues of corporate overhead costs. It represents about 45% of your bill, and you can't find information on it. In fact, in this current rate application, Cal-Am has applied for another 12 or so new additional surcharges to be added to your bill on top of the rate case considerations. The confusion between typical and average is a Cal-Am generated issue. As much as they claim that they're trying to clarify, it's really hard to tell what they really mean when they say average or typical or what it is that they're talking about. The rates we consider are not reasonable in terms of the way they're handled and the way they're impacted on the community. Over a 3-year period we looked at, there were more than 25 changes in the rates. These are periodic changes that occur that are poorly described, poorly defined. They include stranded costs on prior projects we talked about, lost revenue that's related to conservation. The fact that they can recover revenue because of conservation kind of negates the whole issue of conservation. And they take that difference and spread it across the other tiers to make sure they collect it. They have high rates. The rate setting process itself is largely in San Francisco. Even though they have one public hearing here, and that's all you get from one public hearing locally, the process itself takes as much as a year. They're only here once. Local input is very complicated, very difficult. It's a legal structure. It's like a courtroom setting in San Francisco. I've been there. I've been part of it. It is confusing. It is difficult. It's geared for attorneys. They have this system called rate adjustment mechanism, which is where they can recover rates, recover revenue, even though they've lost them in their own rate structure. And spike bills is another example of that. They give you a forgiveness. They say they're forgiving it. They go back to PUC and try to recover that difference, even though it's a contested reading. They're also about ready to start collecting another surcharge, Surcharge 2. It's very possible that Surcharge 2 may end up with another stranded project because of the complications going forward with the existing plan for desal. A public agency, on the other hand, rate setting would be local. Rate setting they'd have as many hearings as they needed. It would have to be clearly explained and clearly justified locally. If not, there's a process called 218 process that could be challenged by any citizen, any ratepayer to challenge that process. Also, we have the power of the ballot to vote out people that's not serving the public on that. That option is nowhere near available in the current process. The key differences here is that the bill itself is indecipherable. In fact, they have a meeting next week in Pacific Grove just to explain the bill. I mean, how much of a water company is it when they have to explain the bill, much less the service, the new projects, the new costs going forward? It's an impenetrable rate review process. Public agency would have a very simple bill, full transparency. We encourage public ownership. Thank you.
Great, thanks. My name's Kevin Tilden. It's my first chance to speak today. I just wanted to thank all of you and again thank the League for having us. It's an important issue and I'm glad people are getting both sides of the story before they make up their mind. On rate setting, hopefully I can bring some clarity to some of the things George mentioned. First of all, he mentioned that in Eric's commentary in the Herald, he'd mentioned a 3-year cycle versus a 5-year cycle versus a 20-year cycle. We do 20-year capital plans. We look at 20 years for what maintenance and repair is going to be needed. We then have 5-year capital plans of how we're going to spend that money. Our rate cycle, the PUC, is a 3-year plan process. So George mentioned it takes a year. It actually takes a year and a half. What happens is we spend a year and a half preparing a rate filing. We made a filing last July of 13. So then we spend 18 months before that preparing it. We file it. The PUC and staff then spends at least 18 months reviewing it before they vote on an increase. So it's 3 years total. During that time, as Ms. George mentioned, there's one local hearing. You can email the Public Advisor's Office or send phone calls to the Commissioners of Public Advisor's Office at any time. But it is 18 months from beginning to end. There's the Office of Ratepayer Advocates that reviews it for thoroughness, scrutinizes all of our requests for prudency, all of that. A local agency can do it however they want. I will tell you in the city I live in, the local agency says we're going to vote on a water rate increase. They announce it on Tuesday, and then at the city council meeting 2 weeks later, they vote on it. So yes, there's opportunity for public input, but it's not a year and a half, and there's not as many bites at the apple and those chances to see the in-depth spending of the agency. All water companies are having large rate increases now because all water infrastructure was built 50 to 100 years ago, and much of it needs replaced. In Monterey, there are greater challenges because of the decommissioning of San Clemente Dam and because we need a new water supply. But everyone's seeing increases. And Mr. Riley mentioned our tiered rates. Our steeply tiered rates are something that the mayors, the Water Management District, the PUC, and us all agreed on. And they work. They've driven down conservation. The impact is if you have a high bill because of a toilet leak or a shower leak or a leaky spot in your irrigation system, you know about it. You found out right away. And yes, if someone comes to us and they've identified a leak and they show us a plumbing bill and they fixed it, we adjust their bill. We don't think that should be your problem. If you got the message and you took the right action and did it, we don't think that should be something that you get stuck with the bill for. So he also mentioned we had incentive to defer maintenance and investment, or defer maintenance so we can make an investment. And the opposite is true. In the PUC process, the same with the gas, electric, cable, and telephone company process, we're incentivized to keep our systems well maintained and not to defer maintenance. And I'll again tell you, the city I live in, the deferred maintenance, especially in the water and wastewater systems where they're underground and out of sight, is the biggest liability the city has, even ahead of the public pension costs. Again, we try to bring a lot of clarity to our rates. We put things in the newspaper, we put stuff on our website. Between now and the end of 2018, when a water supply project is built, based on our estimates today, we believe the rate increase for a typical customer will be 41%. So you see their side saying 300% based on a number they picked from the past or whatever, but that's not we don't know where that comes from, and we cannot support that number. And the current process of a rate proceeding is at the spot where if you guys have concerns, you can be emailing and contacting the public advisor's office, the administrative law judge, or the individual PUC commissioners, and let your voice be heard. Thanks.
The next criteria relates to maintaining an efficient local office, including responding quickly to complaints, a well-trained staff, a responsive management team, and transparent decision-making process. Cal-Am goes first on this.
Thank you. So the local office, I guess one thing I try to tell people as far as being responsive is I feel like I have a responsibility to the customers in this system to advise and assist them through a high bill. I've given out my cell phone number. Dealing with the customers in Monterey, it's a challenge. We do have a billing structure that was designed to promote conservation. 5 tiers. When you have a leak, we have the $2,000 water bill, the $3,000 water bill, and that represents a real customer service challenge for my team to be able to make sure that we can call a customer before they get the bill, to let them know it's coming, to let them know that we will work through the adjustment process with them. We by no means have structured this rate design to cause someone to have to sell their car or anything to that effect. We will adjust the bill and send our conservation folks out to look at their irrigation system. We have really created a small customer service center in the Monterey office. Right now we're taking about 30 to 40 calls a day from customers regarding rates, regarding rate design, regarding leaks, and so we're looking at expanding that really because this district and the conservation issues and the efforts that we have in place, we really feel like we need to continue to expand our efforts in helping people through the issues that they run into with the rates here. It can be confusing, as George said, but again, our rates that have been developed here on the peninsula, that has been a partnership with the Water Management District, with interveners in our rate case, with others in the community that have interest in conservation. These rates have been developed through a real partnership, not to in any way confuse customers, but really in the end to encourage conservation. And they have worked incredibly well, and I would say kudos to the community here for their efforts. On the local office as well, you know, we have a staff of FSRs. They're the technicians that go out to our customers' homes. Very professional and courteous. It's a great team. I've been here in this office for 4 years, and I have never been so impressed with the quality of personnel. We have one employee who has been on our staff for 45 years, and he comes to work every day with a smile. And I will tell you that that type of longevity and that type of employee who after that many years still enjoys his job just continues to encourage me to try to do better. We have folks that on average 25 years in this system. They know it well. They're proud of the work that they do. Christmas Eve, we had some low tank levels, and I was on call that day, and they were out there Christmas Eve just doing whatever it takes to keep this system running. We have a number of lifts with all the different elevation changes here in Monterey, and so any pump station that goes down is an issue that we have to respond to immediately. And so I can't say enough for the dedication and the commitment to keeping our customers in water and keeping the quality where it needs to be. I'm very proud of the group here in Monterey, and I think they do a fantastic job.
Public Water now would love to have all those employees under a public agency as employer, and all of that skill and all of that sentiment and all that support for the community would continue. But the basis of this section is to comment on their local customer service quality. Essentially all calls, emergencies, service requests, billing problems are handled in an out-of-state call center. The local address of the office is nowhere to be found in the phone directory or on their website. Local phone number, neither one is in the phone book nor on their website. In fact, I went to their website about 2 months ago and found a particular pamphlet upside down. I went to it yesterday. It's still upside down. You can't read it. First, Cal-Am denied there were any bill spikes at all, any bill problems on the Cal-Am side. Later, they admitted to some fault. Cal-Am's local profile about local services seems to be mostly public relations and not services. The conservation thing they talked about is very new. Cal-Am's recent workshop on rates was the first one they've ever held. The issues seem to be more misleading than clarifying, at least from a ratepayer point of view. The website has a hard time explaining its own bill. In fact, there are two different places you can go for the bill. It says two different things. Extremely complex bills. Major issues are not explained. They have acronyms that aren't explained. They include stranded costs. They improve San Clemente Dam profits that have never been admitted by Cal-Am. Overhead, corporate overhead that exceeds 45% of the bill is not explained at all. In fact, there's a deceptive piece in their bill where it calls on a surcharge that goes to the Water Management District. And in fact, that surcharge is to cover the damage to the river that's caused by Cal-Am's overpumping. For Water Management District, all the customer service issues would be local. You know where they are. You could find them. You could show up in their office. You could complain, whatever you wanted to do. Emergency call centers would be local. Everything that would happen out of it would be local. As a public agency, all services, all issues, all problems would be in a public arena. If residents disapproved, disagreed, had problems, you can find the person on the board of directors. You could find the staff. They're local. You don't have to go to out of state to find anybody. You can speak directly to anybody and comment at any meeting. Transparency is the law for public agencies. It's not the law for Cal-Am. I want to just read quickly one statement. There was a public purchase in Arizona of a American Water Works comparable to Cal-Am. It's in Arizona, and after they purchased it, they said essentially this, and it's a quote on it. It's the heavy. One of the major issues of Arizona American is for the local issue was the 800 number. Somebody in some remote state would answer the phone and wouldn't know what was going on in Cave Creek. That's a city in Arizona. By handling the system locally and by having it in real time and by having constant communications with the field people, we will know exactly when the problems occur, what the status of that repair is, and be able to communicate more effectively with customers to resolve problems. Having a long-distance service center is terribly complicated and inefficient for the local and unsatisfying the local issues. So what are the key differences? Cal-Am really has a very limited local service, and there's no local community customer service line. Complete lack of billing transparency. The Cal-Am mantra seems to be, we're not responsible for your problems, but we're here to serve. The Water Management District, on the other hand, would have all local services. Rate setting would be completely transparent, and the voters would have an opportunity to veto or intervene if they didn't like it.
As you probably know, an initiative, a petition has been circulated and submitted to the Water Management District that would require the district to prepare a feasibility study and move forward with eminent domain to purchase the Cal-Am system if the feasibility study is shows that it would be feasible. First question is, why should voters support or oppose the proposed initiative?
Well, thank you very much. We very much appreciate being here. So basically, we want to start off with what we think is the number one reason, and that is rates are going crazy. Okay, and to illustrate how crazy the rates have gone, we decided to take a look at our 2005 bills, which happens to correspond to a certain Measure W that the voters voted down. If you take a look, the column that says 74, that's what CalAm calls their typical user. Okay, I happen to disagree with that concept, but 90 is a person who has completely filled out Tier 2, Tier 3, Tier 4, Tier 5. Well, there is no filling out Tier 5. At any rate, if you look at these, and by the way, these are base rates, so they usually have another 30 to 50% worth of charges added to them. But we just thought we'd stick with the base rate, okay? So let's take a look at those rates compared to today. As you can see, things have changed a bit. So when you go to the ballot box, we suggest you think about that. And if you notice that even the typical user is seeing a 2.6 time increase in their water bill for the base rate, it's probably about the same if you go up. And then it can go all the way up. I happen to think the average user uses about 110 units, and you can kind of guesstimate in your mind what their water bill looks like today, not 5 years from now. And we still have no water. So look at these rate increases and ask yourself, how could we possibly have no water? Okay, we think CalAm is too expensive an option. What we know is that private investment is 2 times more expensive than public investment. We're going to look at that a little later. We're currently paying over $4,600 an acre foot. It's likely the most expensive in this state. Not when we use tricky statistics of typical users, but when you use the average based on acre feet delivered. Through mid-2012 through 2018, this is where the rates are going to triple. And we've talked about that in the past about not moving goalposts. And then since the failed projects have cost us over $40 million, we think that's another reason why CalAm is too expensive. And once again, they're spending our money on a project without approvals, and we see the possibility of more stranded costs. They don't worry about stranded costs because we've paid for them every time. But you know, our initiative's all about getting rate relief, so let's talk about that real quickly, or having savings. This is CalAm's profit and loss statement. We have estimated easily able to cut $2.4 million. When you look at corporate overhead, it's amazing. We think that depreciation, we should set aside about $3 million a year for repairs. Technically, that could be a zero if we wanted it to be. The next 3 are zero. If we bought CalAm out, the debt service would come with it. Of course, there's a bond. We'll talk about that later. So the total savings would be $22 million. That's over 40%. But basically, there's a real different philosophy. One is measured by the profit that they make and the sales increases, and the other by the efficiency and how well they serve. 85% of all water is delivered by publicly owned agencies. We're going to be creating a number of new local jobs, and we expect over $10 million to be spent on the peninsula.
Thank you.
Turn.
So the question was, should voters support this initiative? I think I'm not going to tell anyone in this room how to vote today. There are some people in this room who, no matter what, think government can always do it better, and some people who probably think no matter what, a private company can always do it better. And so those people are decided. They know how they're going to vote. But if you're undecided, I would say this is very serious. As much research as you would put into buying a car or choosing where to send your kid to college, you should be doing that. Because in Felton, an average homeowner over 30 years is paying $16,200 in addition to their water bill, which has doubled. And they're getting the same water quality. They would say the same staff. That's a questionable issue. But this is something you need to look at very seriously. And in addition to the cost of getting to a condemnation, you're going to have a cost of an election, the cost of a study, 5 to 10 years of litigation cost, and at the end of that process will be an evaluation trial where Mr. Cohen and Mr. White can't tell you what it's going to cost, and I can't tell you what it's going to cost. A judge and jury that we have no control over are going to set a cost. And maybe you all have passed a bond measure or a Prop 218 process will be enough to pay for it. Maybe you won't. But we can't tell you that this is going to happen. Your water bill is going to go up or down $8 or $28. We have no idea what it's going to be, and we have no control over it. And so the question, I think, for the most undecided folks is, how is this going to affect my water bill? And it's very complicated, and I think it's worthy of much attention. And folks here might say, don't look at the Felton example. And I would say it was owned by our company. It's regulated by the PUC. It's under the California laws of condemnation and eminent domain, which give you a right to take trial and evaluation trial. And in that instance, people were told it would be $2 or $2.5 million and it would take 18 months. And after several years, it was $13.4 million, I believe. And like I said, for the average, it's $45 a month tax increase on top of their water bill that's almost doubled. So yes, this may be different. This may be the one water condemnation where you save money and reduce costs. But there's a body of evidence that suggests otherwise, and I think it's worthwhile for folks to look into that and research that between now and June 3rd.
We are now at closing comments, and Cal-Am.
So I was here in 2005 in Measure W. I spoke to this group in, I believe, late 2010 or early 2011 when there was a discussion of another matter going on the ballot at that time. And I will just tell you, in Felton, I every day worked with people, and I said, look, you should look at this as if you're remodeling your kitchen or putting your kid in college for a year or something like that, buying a new car, because that's what it's going to cost. And they said, no, it will never be like that. This is different. It's not the same. And it is the same. The cost of providing water service, electricity, chemicals, labor, power supply, all that stuff, there's no magic elixir that you get it cheaper or half price some other way. Most of the ingredients cost the same. Maybe a public agency may get financing on items cheaper. Maybe they may be able to do some things more efficiently. Some things we're going to get more, an average city, I will tell you, pays about 3 times the price we pay for water meter, because our company nationally spends $1 billion a year on capital. We get good deals on pipeline and meters and engineering contracts. So there are places where it might be more efficient one way or the other. But the idea that your water bill is going to be cut in half, or that you're going to avoid an increase, or that it's going to be done perfectly one way or the other is just not true. The costs are going to be about the same, and on top of that, like I said, you're going to have the cost of an election, the cost of a study, and the cost of 5 or 10 years of litigation. 2 things I think you should also know is California law is very clear. If we get to the end of that process and the condemning agency cannot afford the price the jury decides upon, all of our company's price until that point, they have to pay. The second thing the law is clear about is severance costs. If the district decides to condemn our systems in Monterey and doesn't take our satellite systems, they have to pay our economies of scale to operate those systems forever. And I assume the way that the initiative is written is that it will require the district also to condemn the city of Seaside's water system, which is in the Water Management District's boundaries. So this is a very complicated thing. I know that many of you are experts at it, but if you haven't delved into this, you really need to look at it and think carefully before you make your decisions. There's water rates in Monterey are complicated, and the water supply process is complicated. But we're very close to having a water supply solution for the first time in many years, and we'd like to focus on that rather than the selection. Thanks.
Ron?
All right. So I'm going to make a couple general comments on different topics. The first one I want to talk about is Cal-Am, and you've heard some of these arguments today. I call it the "oh no you don't" speech, where they warn us, don't you dare talk about condemnation. They like to selectively grab information. For instance, they talk about how Felton overestimated the sale. That may be true, but they did fail to mention that they themselves overestimated their value at the beginning at $43 million, then at $25 million just before trial, but accepted $3.4 million. So 13.4. Thanks everyone for paying attention. That's why it's up here. They also misrepresent valuation methods. I think the cut to the chase on this is we have a lot of comps out there, and in fact the comps show that the values that we used in the document you can pick up before you leave on Can We Afford Cal-Am are much lower than the comps we used. So they totally misrepresent and continue to, as you just heard, the Felton thing. They talk about the increased taxes. Notice they forgot to talk about the reduced rates, okay? At the end of the day, Felton is saving money. The document was written by Food and Water Watch, and it's heavily footnoted rather than opinional, okay? And this gets me more than anything. They constantly deceptively portray the cost of the San Clemente Dam. Let's look at that for a second, okay? Today, on their website, it says the dam will cost the citizens $49 million, okay? They don't mention the $26.8 million that's been tacked onto that we all get to pay, nor do they mention the principal and interest. The total, $152 million from all of us. That is $16 per ratepayer per month. Quick footnote, if this were a public agency, we would pay half the financing costs. Anyway, they also like to say that we've been through this process before. You just heard that. I'm going to give him 5 reasons for Kevin to think about why this is different. First of all, this initiative was written by the Peninsula citizens. Over 8,400 people demanded it be placed on the ballot, and it was collected all volunteer. It clearly defines an unbroken line between voter approval and buyout. And we've had 8 more years of CalAm. I can't think of a better reason why it's different. And CalAm is too expensive, and the rates are a nightmare. Okay, in fact, you remember this, we just looked at in the last presentation. Okay, so they also like to say it's nothing more than an expensive distraction. Well, I have to say that I think that's totally insincere. The people that work on the desal plant, they're the ones that won't be the ones that'll be politically representing CalAm. And they might enjoy having a little distraction excuse because for some reason, in 3 years in a row, they've been unable to get permits, they've not been able to produce a final ERR, and they've settled no water rights. This is a high-risk proposition that we're dealing with. As far as the expensive distraction goes, it's going to cost us less than a half a penny for every dollar of failed projects by CalAm. So like it or not, the distraction is here. That's what I have to say. And if this is too much for CalAm to deal with their full-time paid workforce, then I have a suggestion. Negotiate the best sale price possible with the Water Management District and sell your assets. Oh, and thank you for the opportunity.
Now is the time for questions. Could I have a league member who would circulate the microphone, Bev?
I will do so if I can ask the first question.
All right, President.
Eric, you wrote recently an op-ed in which you asked, among other things, for fair practices in the upcoming election. The League stands for fair elections, so my question to you is, have you considered a campaign cap on the election that's coming up? And are you willing to talk with the other side about fair practices you'd like to see happen in the upcoming election?
First of all, I guarantee we will comply with all FPPC and local election laws and all of that if this makes it on the ballot. As far as a spending cap, you know, if spending money in California bought elections, we'd have Meg Whitman as our governor, and before her would have been Michael Huffington and Al Checkey and the guy named Unz and other people. So I don't think you're going to see any records broken on campaign spending, but as far as agreeing to a cap that limits us to what they have raised or something like that, we have no idea what that could be, so we're just not what we're interested in, but thanks.
One moment, the Public Water now has a chance to address that issue.
I think we've seen the prior campaign. CalAm spent $300,000 on the last campaign, and it wasn't even a serious campaign. So we're expecting a huge investment from CalAm. Of course, we're a bunch of citizens and small business people that are trying to get the public's attention on a public interest issue. So we're not heavily backed, we're not financed, we don't have a deep pocket anywhere to compete with CalAm. So they may have the airways and they may have the the mailer system or whatever the high-cost issues are in television, we expect to run a low-cost campaign, and that's all we can afford. So it really is going to be big money against small money, and I think that's a key issue. When you're told to look at the details, look at how the campaign goes as well.
In 2005, there was a major W, and the KLM spent $300,000. I want to know whether that is paid by the ratepayers.
So we did have this campaign in 2005. By a 2-to-1 margin, residents said no, they didn't even want to do a study about public ownership. That was put on the ballot by the district. And anything you see that's campaign related from us will say not paid, pay at ratepayer expense. The PUC would not allow us to use money from our customer bills to pay for this campaign even if we wanted to. So it's all going to be from our parent company and from other areas of our company, other non-regulated portions.
We know we're going to get outspent, and the fact that they'll be coming out of their own kitty just made my day. So thank you.
There's been a recent sale in Arizona and New Mexico of water assets owned by American Water that were sold to EPCOR, a company out of Toronto. This was a willing buyer and willing seller. You've repeatedly said we need willing buyers, willing seller comparisons. Now I note that sale was 4 to 5 times the size of ours, and the decided willing buyer, willing seller price was $450 million. So I want to know how you respond to that.
That's a good question, and a couple of reasons. One is, first of all, for the reasons I mentioned, Felton is more analogous. It's regulated by the PUC. It's part of our California subsidiary. It's under the California laws for eminent domain and condemnation. All that applies to Felton does not apply to Arizona. Our parent company made a decision to sell all of our assets in Arizona and New Mexico and found a willing buyer and agreed on a price. That is one way of arriving at evaluation. When we do this process, we'll go at least 3 or 4 ways of finding a valuation, and getting an accurate value will cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions. One way is they do a replacement cost new, if they built the entire system new, less depreciation over the years. One way is they go out and actually do core samples. This pipe might be 60 years old, but it might still have 30 years left. And then another was they would look at comp sales, and then they would do a 5th one on cash flow and net income and future, the way you value any business you purchase. So it's very complicated, and to get an accurate value is a very expensive, long process.
Okay, well, to deny that a willing buyer and a willing seller is not the absolute gold standard in establishing prices is to deny reality, in my opinion. Also, I listened to their presentation. It's on video, the Oh No You Don't presentation, I call it. And in that presentation, it was kind of interesting because what he wound up describing as far as replacing and so forth, if you were going to go buy a used car, based on their criteria for that, you would actually wind up paying about 4 times the original price of the car. So to say that anybody would contemplate such a valuation is ridiculous. And a willing buyer, willing seller will be the standard. And like Kevin said before, none of us can predict until the jury comes back, but we know we have a great deal of latitude as far as affordability, and we can save money.
Why is CalAm treating the commercial users differently than homeowners? They have a flat rate, and whereas we have this tiered system that really substitutes the homeowner.
So we recently revised the rate design, and when I say we, again, it was a settlement with a number of parties that were involved in revising how we bill both commercial and residential customers. Commercial businesses that during periods of high volumes of business, so 4th of July or Memorial Day, a lot of folks come into a restaurant. Because of the allotment system, that restaurant was penalized as a successful business. They may have implemented every conservation measure possible, but yet they were still penalized because the community is a place where many folks in California want to visit. We determined that pricing water for a commercial enterprise based on their level of implementation of best management practices was the fairest and best way to do that. So really, it was about equity for the business community as well as our residential customers, and it was arrived through a settlement that included multiple parties.
I just did a radio interview last night, and the person I was talking with, who is a small business owner, said that this new rate structure has really hurt him. I think this structure was really designed for the high-end, large industry, and it's a real quandary. I know that the essence of our water bill is that if in a given month we run over, we get to pay a whole additional fee. Well, this holiday season, we had a number of guests at our house, and I monitor my meter every week because I got one of those super bills from Cal-Am, and I decided no way am I going to let that happen. And it turned out he misread the meter. But the point is that all of a sudden this one month I'm going to see a super sacco bill only because I had a few guests. But hotels are not going, they're going to be exempt from that concept. So I think it's difficult. It's a difficult question, and I don't think that it's fair.
I've been to a number of George's meetings in the past, and I always felt I was hearing only one side of the story. So I came to this meeting solely to hear the other side of the story. Why didn't you prepare it with facts, data, a real case?
Thank you.
Well, we have a handout that we hope addresses the facts that you wanted. I hope we provide information about the condemnation process and the history, and I think Eric provided good facts about our customer service and our local staff and our 3-year rate cases and 5-year and 20-year capital plans. So I'm sorry if you didn't hear what you wanted. You know, we had the question in advance, we prepared, and I'm sorry if you didn't like the answers. But no.
Just briefly, our group has done more research on Cal-Am than anywhere else in the country. The professional staff at the DRA under the PUC has already admitted in a public statement that the complexity that Cal-Am presents to them makes it almost impossible for those professionals to get a handle on everything that Cal-Am is trying to present to the Commission. So to say that there's a way to simplify this, we think we've done the research, we have simplified things, we have yet to see something as simple and as direct as the information we're presenting.
And I want to just mention to everybody, we have 4 fact sheets in the back that we're asking you to pick up if you're interested. Also, now that Cal-Am has in fact stated where they're going, we're going to build a web page very shortly to address all of these, because obviously this is very spin-oriented, and I think that you have a right to know what we think are the true answers.
Under the existing scenario, there's the Office of Ratepayer Advocate in Sacramento who has technical expertise, legal expertise, and their job is to represent the ratepayers to counter what is said. Under public ownership, with the Water Management District now running it, what entity is there that is the independent, has the technical expertise and all the rest to validate what is being presented by the staff of the Water Management District and its level of accuracy?
I believe, first of all, you need 2 or 3 entities to deal with the complexities of what the Public Utilities Commission has created. Simple fact is that when we take over Cal-Am, we will not only say goodbye to Cal-Am, but we'll say goodbye to the PUC. And in doing so, you asked who will be auditing, who will be watching. Well, first of all, public disclosure. They're going to have to provide a great deal of public disclosure. And this peninsula is well known for a lot of people. Somebody on my left here who goes through things with a fine-tooth comb. I certainly intend to keep an eye on it. And I think it's just a whole different, it's an elegant kind of problem as opposed to what you're saying. George?
Quickly, we hope to remove the complexity by removing the PUC and Cal-Am. no corporate overhead, no profit, no complicated calculations around corporate taxes. All of that disappears. It'll be far simpler with public ownership.
I'm executive director of a group called the Public Trust Alliance, and we're an intervener in some of the cases before the PUC. How do we know that we're talking about the right things when we're talking about a lot of stuff's going on behind closed doors?
I'm not sure if that's a question that has a straight answer, because I'm not sure if it's a straight question. But the point is, public ownership is the state of the art in 85% of the country. We are an anomaly. We're an anomaly with a complicated structure. We're an anomaly with overpriced issues and failures. We're an anomaly with a history of non-performance. We can correct that with public ownership. That's the simple fact. And we're willing to share any fact and every point of view with everybody. And I'm not sure Cal-Am is ready to do that. They're too busy spinning their point of view.
I don't think we are having the right conversation. On one of their slides in their presentation, they mentioned first at the top part of the slide that we hadn't done anything to identify any new water sources. And then they identified the 4 projects we pursued to identify new water sources. And just briefly, folks don't need the history lesson. They had it on as a new San Clemente Dam. I think they meant new Los Padres Dam. It became clear to us through permitting we weren't going to be able to build a dam on the Carmel River anytime soon. In the late 90s, early 2000, we moved to a co-located desal plant with the power plant at Moss Landing. Because of changing environmental rules, it became clear we weren't going to be able to do a desal plant with once-through cooling at that power plant. We then moved to the regional desalination plant, trying to accommodate the community's interest in public ownership. And because of problems with our public partners that we had nothing to do with, that project failed. We now have the water supply project. I think that's what the conversation should be about. I think getting that project approved and built and solving this community's problem is what we should be talking about.
There's a handout that's been handed out. It's pretty much on everybody's table. It says that the water company's got a negative equity of $14 million. Negative equity. Is that in any way credible, what he says here?
You're welcome to pick up a copy of our evaluation, and we actually use several comparable methodologies, one of which says that Cal-Am could be worth as much as $200 million. But we believe that if you use comparables, the number you'd come up with is about $120 million. Regardless of which one of those you would pick, the savings would, through bond payment, allow us to absolutely save money. We figure that the average water bill after paying the bond is about 15% savings. And after the bond is paid off, the savings will go up to about 30%. So I'm not going to sit here and talk one way or the other about what I think. I haven't even read it, by the way.
I'll just reiterate, I did not prepare their document. I don't think the numbers are credible, and as I said earlier, it's irrelevant. What's relevant is at the end of a 10-year process, what does a judge and jury say? And you and I don't have control over that, and we can't make any predictions based on it.
I live in the old Bishop Water Company area, and I would like to know how we fit into the whole scheme of things, because we're now owned by Cal-Am, and our water rates have skyrocketed this year. So somehow or another, we're connected.
We do operate the Bishop water system. It's part of the Seaside Basin, the Laguna Seca sub-area. The Laguna Seca sub-area, the water supply for that area is stressed as well as many others. So we are looking at options to continue to supply Ryan Ranch, Hidden Hills, and Bishop over the next 50 years. So that's an area that we do supply. The rates are not the same as the main system. They are different, but we do supply Bishop.
Would we be part of this public water now?
The proposal is for all the assets that serve the district, which are in the district boundaries, and that's the jurisdiction that we're addressing with the initiative. If a service area exists outside the district, and I know there are a number of them, that would have to be considered in the evaluation of the asset, as well as the severance damages or whatever might occur during the evaluation process for eminent domain. It would be part of the mix of the evaluation.
You talked about the increases in rates, and did you allude to the fact that that's partly because we're having a drought? And if that's the case, it doesn't cost more money to deliver water in a drought. we have less water, absolutely. Is the point of the increases just to increase efficiency by the users?
I hope I didn't misspeak, but I may have, so thank you for the opportunity to clarify it. The cost increases across the country are because infrastructure, whether it's water, wastewater, gas, electric, whatever, a huge amount of it was built between 40 and 80 years ago and now needs to be replaced. So that's why you're seeing cost increases everywhere. Here, like in energy prices, water prices are steeply tiered to encourage conservation, but the overall national trend of rate increases is not because of drought. If I led you believe that, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
The only thing I might add is our water issue is our local issue. It would be handled locally, whether the rates go up or down or the projects go forward more or less. It's a local issue. It would not be hooked into other dynamics in other parts of the country. We have no other water source except the rain and what's in the ground.
I would like to thank our panelists very much for a very thoughtful and in-depth review of all the issues before us.
All right.